and I think this is directed at Sharon, but if any of the others of you have observations on this as well, is the big gap between metro and non-core due more to availability or to adoption? If you don't have it available, how can you adopt it?
Right. That's a very logical question, and availability is kind of the first mover in explaining that gap, but increasingly it's adoption that really matters to achieve all of these outcomes in terms of economic gains and so forth. So it's hard to parse the difference between availability and adoption in those terms, but we can do it statistically to show which is really contributing to certain types of outcomes. I don't know if I invited Roberto to offer comments as well, since he's with us. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Definitely, that's something we're seeing across the field is that issue of availability and adoption, which one follows which. And based on our study, it's adoption, the one that really is the one that we discovered has the most impact on those economic indicators that we showed.
We want to take another question from you or from the audience?
Do we have one from the audience? Yes.
One over here.
Will Aldrin.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Kaufman. I'm from here in town. My law firm practices property rights and does a lot of work with rural communities. I was struck by the statement from Mr. Llewellyn that the problem was not broadband, but cell phone towers. And at the same time, the statements by Mr. Windhausen that the problem was broadband. And I was just wondering if the two of you could reconcile that for me. Do we have enough broadband?
No,
is the problem the cell phone towers, or is it the other way around?
The problem was not spectrum and not technology, that it was simply not enough cell phone towers.
Thank you. Well, that clarifies yours. And is that the consensus?
It is. I mean, we need more cell phone towers as well as we need more fiber deployment because they go hand in hand. You can't, they work together. A lot of times the cell phone towers are connected by fiber to carry the cell signals back to the head end or rest of the internet. So you need investment in both technologies, and the technologies are there. They have been developed. They work. What we need is the way to get them deployed more extensively. And I think Sharon's research, even from the previous question, talked about how there are some areas of this country where there just isn't any broadband whatsoever. And of course, you can't have any broadband demand unless you have a network there that's ready to carry the traffic. The only thing I'd add to that is that oftentimes it's more than just are you connected or not? Have you adopted or not? Because in an awful lot of cases, once you get broadband, you need more. And we've seen this with schools, we're seeing this with homes too. You get that initial broadband connection and you realize, wow, this could really be great. And then you start using it and you fill up the capacity very quickly. So that's why you need to think ahead of the market and start to say, okay, if I'm going to make this investment, I ought to really invest in technologies that are going to carry a large amount of bandwidth, because you need to prepare for the inevitable growth and demand that's coming, that's going to continue to come in these areas. And so you can't just build for that minimal level of capacity. You need to be thinking about future-proof technologies. And that's in particular where there's a shortage, not only in Sharon's maps, but there's a shortage of future-proof technologies in a much wider area of the United States that doesn't have sufficient capability today.
It seems to me that this is where Mark's reference to the Internet of Things is pretty significant. We're probably going to be hearing that phrase a lot more. But as we become increasingly networked, and as more and more of our devices and machines and systems of all sorts are networked and expect to have access to servers or the cloud, building, we're going to have much greater demands on our telecommunications infrastructure in all of its flavors and varieties.